They're not good enough to start. They're not even good enough to play. But they do talk a good game. So come join Lou and Jose from the sidelines where all the best sports discussions happen anyway. Welcome in to the Benchwarmerz podcast.
Welcome into the program, everyone. I am Lou Ruggieri. That is Jose Ortiz. And this is the Benchwarmerz podcast. Wherever, whenever, and however you happen to be listening, we appreciate you taking some time out of your busy schedule to spend it with us. We're going to try to make it worth your while. This is Season 2, Episode 16 of our show. You can go and find all of our prior shows on iHeartRadio, Amazon Podcasts, pretty much anywhere you get your podcasts. We're on Facebook, YouTube, Instagram, at the Benchwarmerz Podcast, at BWPod on Twitter, or go find all of that fun information and more at thebenchwarmers.com. Benchwarmers with a Z. Lot going on this week. We have a big show. We have almost too much to talk about, not enough time to talk about it, so we'll try to be a little more concise than sometimes usual. We get on lots of tangents. I will try to keep that to a minimum, personally speaking. Breaking down, we're moving right along. We've been doing one division a week, and then we realized that the NFL season is fast approaching, so we had to kind of speed up our discussions. And this week, we're going to be breaking down and ranking the AFC East and NFC East going into next season, who we think is going to win and who we think is going to lose. And we'll do some over-under stuff as well. We're going to have a little rookie QB who should start versus who will start. I haven't come up with a cute little name for it yet, but it's just going through the list of rookie QBs and who we think exactly the way it sounds. Who should start, who will start. Coming up in a little bit. But first, this week in sports, we do have some Clippers news, some NBA news in totality. So let's get to that before we jump into our NFL heavy show for the week. Jose, this stuff all just kind of happened recently. The Clippers, big players this last week. Biggest thing, I guess, is Kawhi Leonard, despite his knee injury, was signed to a max 4-year extension, $176.3 million. It's a 3-year deal with a 4th year that is, it's a player option, 4th year. And that, I mean, right off the bat is pretty good for a guy who's probably going to miss most, if not all, of next season. I think Kawhi did it right for himself.
Yeah, it's taking a page out of Kevin Durant's playbook there, sign a big deal and then miss a whole year. I mean, I suppose is what you have to do, right? In the NBA, you don't really win if you don't have a top 10 player on your team. When healthy, Kawhi Leonard's arguably a top 5 player. It's probably worth it for the year to just, maybe you'll be bad and get a good draft pick, and all of a sudden you have a situation where Tim Duncan's joining David Robinson years ago. So who knows what we can get, but this seems to be the smart move. Yeah,
and the Clippers also jettisoned some, I would argue, dead weight. They got rid of Patrick Beverley, Rajon Rondo, and Daniel Arturo. I guess the best of those would be Patrick Beverley. He is most notably remembered for breaking the nose of Devin Booker in the playoffs last year, amongst other things. The Clippers acquired Eric Bledsoe from the Grizzlies for all of that stuff, I guess. And who is Eric Ledso, you might be wondering, because I knew who he was, but I never really thought about. I can be honest. I think I've thought about Eric Bledsoe once in my life up until this point. This would be the second time. Eric Bledsoe, for his career, is a 14 points, almost 4 rebounds, 4.5 assists. He's a 45% field goal shooter. He's a 33% three-point shooter. He's an average guy. He's not. I didn't realize he's been in the league since 2010. So I mean, he's been here for a while. I mean, I guess it's an upgrade because it's not like the Clippers really gave up all that much. I mean, Patrick Beverley doesn't do much on the offensive side, and Rondo's. I mean, even playoff Rondo didn't really show up last year, and Daniel Arturo is. I mean, I don't even know what he does really.
Yeah, it's much ado by nothing here. Eric Ledso is a mediocre player. Patrick Beverley, also a mediocre player. Rajon Rondo's not even mediocre anymore. So I'd never heard of the other guy, Daniel Arturo. It seems like just probably a money move to try and shed some salary. and I expect the Clippers to be pretty bad next season.
Yeah. On the other side of the coin, in the East, Marcus Smart with the Celtics signed a 4-year, $77 million extension. Marcus Smart, I guess he's kind of their third guy.
He's another mediocre player. I don't.
Yeah.
It just seems like I don't know. Perhaps it's harder to find talent in the draft than I realized, but Marcus Smart was a career average of 13 points a game, something like that, 12, 13 points a game. 4 years, $77 million. You can't just find a guy in the draft who can average 13 points a game. I don't know. I'm kind of blown away. I mean, looking at his numbers last year, he shot 39% from the field last year. In 2020.
His career numbers are real bad. He's 10.2 points a game, 3.6 rebounds, and 4.2 assists.
Worse than I thought. He's even worse than I thought. I was giving him credit. Oh, it's because in 2020 he was 13 points a game. That's where I got thrown off.
He's a little more He's a 2-time all defensive player, so maybe that's where they're hanging their hat, is that he's a little more defensive minded, which is true. I mean, he does show up a little on the defensive side of the ball.
Guys shooting below 40% from the field. That's atrocious.
Yeah,
I don't have to guard you.
It's true. I mean, I guess they have to keep him. I don't know. It's the Celtics are getting closer and closer to just looking like they might have to just blow it up and restart, which is a shame because they were. Was it 2 years ago now? They were in the conference championship against Miami. I mean, that was.
Yeah, that was just.
It just feels like a lifetime ago.
Yeah.
But we'll see. So, I mean, good for Marcus Smart. I guess that's a great extension. Good for him. But that's about it for NBA news. There is mild NFL news. Preseason started this week. The only headline I saw that even caught my attention. It's a lot of, as you said, much ado about nothing. Alan Hearns, who we learned is still playing. He's a Dolphins wide receiver. Hurt his wrist. He'll be out 3 months with surgery, which not crazy. Dak Prescott had an MRI on his injured shoulder, and the Cowboys were the ones to break that news themselves. So I guess that sort of took a little of the air out of the excitement, because if that was someone else, Adam Schefter or something, I think we all would have panicked a little bit, or Cowboys fans would have panicked a little bit. But the Cowboys said that it was just sort of precautionary, and so far, no news is good news apparently. So he seems like he's doing okay, which leads me to the other kind of, it's not news, but it's an event this week. Hard Knocks started this week, and it's about the Dallas Cowboys, who, clearly the Cowboys don't get enough publicity, so why not put them on Hard Knocks to finally get them some attention. I watched this, Jose, and I know you didn't, and I have to say you didn't miss much. And partially, I don't say that just as a kind of a haggard, weathered, beaten down ex-Cowboy fan. It's just, in the day and age that we're in, where everything happens and we find out literally minutes later that something happened. One of the big storylines was that Dak was coming back from injury, which we all knew. And then, he hurt his arm, his shoulder, throwing in practice, which by now for us in, sportscasting that's ancient news at this point. So we're on to the next level of that. And so kind of seeing it happen was interesting. You kind of got a little bit of a window, because usually Hard Knocks focuses on some, no-name player that gets cut at the end. And he's playing a guitar or something, and they're throwing footballs at dusk. But, they actually had some stars in it. Zeke was there. And, some of it was a little hokey. They had Zeke trying to wrap a birthday present for Dak, and it just felt so forced. And Dak was out there. Micah Parsons got a lot of airtime, and he looks good. He was very excited. He's very high energy. He's a rookie. But there were two things that I took away from this, and we're going to talk NFC East rankings a little bit later. And I'm going to tell you, watching Hard Knocks affected my rankings, because so two things I came away with. One was the entire coaching staff, and I don't remember this last year when I think it was the Raiders and the Chargers. And I get it. It's a locker room. we've all kind of been in locker rooms, and it's testosterone and it's dudes and trying to be dudes and whatever. But the coaching staff of the Cowboys, I almost thought that they had like Tourette's syndrome, because every coach that spoke, almost literally every third word was an expletive. It was like a segue in between sentences. Like, okay, guys, let's go F and do this. All right, we're going to F and do this. You're going to F this up, right? We're going to go F. It's like, okay, guys, like you can't, I mean, cursing has its merits in the world, but it's like the top of the food pyramid, the old food pyramid. Like, use sparingly. You don't use it as one of your foundational communication devices. It's something you sprinkle in for affect, and then it makes a point. You don't, a four-letter word should never be your transition into another sentence. It's just, it bothered me, and it felt just so over the top. And then the last thing, Mike McCarthy. So Mike McCarthy did this thing, and I don't know if you remember the Raiders. John Gruden had a dumb thing like this where every time he gave a speech, he said, "Knock on wood if you're with me," and everybody would knock on the desk. And he said it to the point where it became like an OCD tick of his, and now he's just mocked mercilessly. So McCarthy decided to show his team a clip of Austin Powers. And it was about Austin Powers talking about.
Wait.
Austin
Powers, the spy who shagged me, like Austin Powers.
No, that was the sequel. This is International Man of Mystery.
Oh, we're still talking about the same guy, though. I was like, to make sure that I didn't forget.
No, Austin Powers, the spy who shagged me, was the sequel to Austin Powers, International Man of Mystery.
Yeah. Okay.
Austin Powers, he has a clip that he shows his team about basically the mojo of his team. So he's trying to he shows them mojo. It's this whole scene about what mojo is to Austin Powers, whatever. So then Mike McCarthy takes this and starts preaching and asking his team to go out and have a mojo moment. Did you have a mojo moment today? Let's go have a mojo moment. And Jose, when I tell you, I had so much secondhand embarrassment. Okay, let me just put something in perspective for you. Okay, do you know what year Austin Powers International Man of Mystery came out?
I want to say 1997.
That's spot on. Well done.
Oh, wow.
1997.
Okay.
Do you know what year Micah Parsons was born? 1999.
Yeah.
Okay.
Okay.
All right. So let's just put that in perspective. Okay. So you're showing a bunch of guys a movie clip that's older than they are. And it just felt, it's like, dude, how out of touch are you? Your mojo moment from a movie 25 years old. What's next week is going to be Yabba Dabba Do It, and show some Flintstones clips, and then he's going to play some MC Hammer, and it's going to be hammer time for the defense. Like, come on, man.
Well, I will say this. Well, having not seen it, all I can do is comment from what you're saying.
It's as bad as it sounds.
I do think there is some value to movies that came out before you're born. Like, I love Rocky, right? And Rocky came out before I was born. I think the first one, yeah. But I think you could do, in the second one, yeah, it's true. I think there are some lessons to be learned from older movies that are that can be passed down. But Austin Powers is not one of them. Austin Powers is not one of them. I was gonna say, like, yeah, if you're showing Braveheart, like there's certain
Gladiator,
movies,
sure,
Gladiator. There's certain movies that I can say, okay, you know what, this movie has some transcendent power that
yes, I will agree with that.
Past generations. But Austin Powers, I mean, what are you gonna throw Ace Ventura: Pet Detective next? Like, it's just, that's basically the same caliber of movie. So yeah, it was so
painful. I just go YouTube it, or I'll give you my HBO password. You can go watch it, because it was brutal, and it's just so, it's like, come on, dude. This is not a good, it's just not a good omen for the Cowboys. Like, this is the mentality of your coach. And then hearing, I mean, Mike McCarthy, I think he was like a tow booth operator at some point. And he just has this kind of, he's still that Midwestern guy, but just to hear him like swearing like a drunken sailor trying to, it's like, instead of having substance, it's almost like comedians. Like it's the guys that are really funny don't need to curse much at all. But the guys that don't have a lot of material try to make up for it by being super blue. And it just had a very unsettling feeling. Like if I was in that locker room, maybe because I'm older now, I'm not a 21-year-old, wide receiver, obviously. But if I was sitting at that desk and listening to some guy who's telling me about Austin Powers, I would have just like, you know what, man, I think I'm going to go on COVID protocol or something. Like I got to get out of here. This is insane. So it just bothered me because it was so uncomfortable to watch. All right, I'm done with that rant. I'm sorry. It's not good. It's not good.
You're making me not want to watch the second episode now.
You should definitely watch it because maybe I'm wrong. I don't know. Maybe I'm just tired of the Cowboys over publicized, underperforming nature, and it just.
You've been fed up with this for a few years now, so it's not like anyone who hasn't been friends with Lou for the last 20 years plus. This has been like the last, I want to say 6-7 years, where you've just been fed up and just like, I don't care what the preseason prognostications are. I don't care who's on their team. I don't care what the experts are saying, and it's hard to argue with you. Yeah, I think I bought into them. Dak's rookie year, 2016, when they went 13-3, and then as soon as they got bounced in the first round, that was it. I was like, you know what? That was the chance. That was the Russell Wilson moment with the Legion of Boom. That was the Ben Roethlisberger, against the Seahawks. Like that was the chance that we had. We could have caught lightning in a bottle, and there was no more we after that. It was nope, we're out. So just frustrating. So we'll get to that a little bit later. The Cowboys are not last in my list for NFC East teams. I'm not that spiteful. I tried to be objective about it, and I will admit there is some bias to it, but we'll get to that a little bit later. But coming up next, we're going to just run through some of the rookie quarterbacks from the 2021 draft. I'm going to ask Jose if of these quarterbacks, who should start and who will start, and we'll see where those lines intersect. So stay tuned for that. We're going to take a break and come right back on the Benchwarmers podcast.
Thanks for listening to the Benchwarmers podcast. Follow along with us on the Benchwarmers podcast on Facebook and Instagram. And don't forget to review us on iTunes, Google Play, or wherever you get your podcasts.
If you think or know you had COVID-19, you can be around others after 10 days since symptoms first appeared, and after 24 hours with no fever without fever-reducing medication, and after other symptoms have improved. If you have tested positive for COVID-19 and you had no symptoms, you can be around others 10 days after you got tested for COVID-19. To learn more, visit cdc.gov/coronavirus.
Welcome back to the Benchwarmers podcast, where being all talk is actually a good thing. Now, back to the action. Or talk, I guess.
Welcome back to the program, everyone. I am Lou Ruggieri. That is Jose Ortiz, and this is the Benchwarmers podcast, season 2, episode 16. Moving right along. iHeartRadio, Amazon, iTunes, Google Play, Spotify. Go find us everywhere podcasts exist. YouTube, Facebook, Instagram, at the Benchwarmers podcast, at the BW Pod on Twitter, or go to thebenchwarmers.com for all of that information and more. We touched on a few things in the opening segment, some NBA news, Clippers acquiring Eric Ledso and getting rid of some dead weight in Patrick Beverley, Rajon Rondo. Kawhi Leonard signs a 4-year, $176.3 million extension. Marcus Smart with the Celtics signs a somewhat less impressive, but impressive for him nonetheless, 4-year, $77 million extension. We touched on some hard knocks, and Jose, I'm going to try our best to have some mojo moments in the rest of the show.
My whole life, mojo moments.
Yeah, that's it. Oh, God. Coming up in a little bit, we're going to be touching on the NFC East, where the Cowboys reside, and all of their mojo. AFC East in a little bit. But first, to start off our weekly football fix, I wanted to go through I was just watching preseason football, and it's funny. I know I had this thought the other day, and it felt wrong and it felt right at the same time. Like I understand that, life is especially getting older. I understand life is precious, and you should, enjoy every minute of every day and really be happy for the days that you have when you're healthy and can do what you want to do without being encumbered by any sort of illness or, whatever external problem or internal problem for that matter. But all that being said, I kind of want the next 3 weeks to just snap out of existence, like Infinity War style, and just sort of get to, what is it, September 9th, where it's opening day, and just get to football already. Because, preseason's fun and it's interesting. And now that, especially since, doing the show, it's a lot more interesting because I have things I need to pay attention to. So it gives me a reason to watch, the Washington football team versus the New England Patriots in August. But one of those things was watching some of the quarterbacks like Mac Jones, for example. And it just got me thinking, of the rookie quarterbacks, who will start and who should start. And I don't think that those two are the same list. And so I'm just going to run down kind of the first, second. It's most of the big names that we saw, mostly from the first round. There's Kyle Trask in the second, Kellen Mond in the third. And then I have two bonus ones I'll get to, even though they're not necessarily rookies, but I want to throw them at you as well.
Can I just jump in? Are these for week one? You're saying it should start week one of this year or at some point this season?
Well, I'll leave it up to you. If you think,
okay,
should you just dive right in week one? Should you wait, mid-season, or should you let them sit for a full year?
Okay.
Because I feel like it's different based on the level of, it's who else is there, quarterback wise, what the team circumstances are. Are they ready to win now? Are they, just a dumpster fire and they're just going to get their quarterback killed? It's, there's a lot of variables, and that's sort of what I'm asking, because it was not as easy as I thought it was going to be.
Okay.
And so we'll just go right down the list. Number one, first overall draft pick, Trevor Lawrence with the Jacksonville Jaguars. Do you think he should start? Or if not, when will he start?
He should be the week one starter, and I think he will be the week one starter. No offense to Gardner Minshew. You were a nice stopgap bridge quarterback, and maybe you have a chance at being a starter someplace else, but you don't invest the number one pick on a generational talent and have him sit on the bench, especially when you were a 2-win team or a 1-win team, whatever they were last year.
Yeah, I agree. I think, Gardner Minshew, I would like to see him get traded to somewhere, maybe. I think certainly as a backup, I think he has the potential to be the best backup in the league, or at least compete for that spot, which I don't know if that's necessarily it's like it's tough to, it's a compliment. It's like a backhanded compliment. It's like you're the best backup, so it means you're the worst starter. But I think Trevor Lawrence absolutely has to start week one, and just throw him in. The Jags are rebuilding. It's Urban Meyer's first year. It's Trevor Lawrence's first year. It's they have a lot of promise, and I think that Trevor Lawrence, if he's even remotely close to what we've been hearing about that he's going to be, even Peyton Manning had a lackluster first year, so I think Trevor Lawrence can follow in that same ilk. Number two, Zach Wilson for the New York Jets.
Yeah, I don't even know who their backup is. I literally was just trying to think who is, and I look it up as Mike. Is it Mike White?
White, yeah.
Yeah. This is
James Morgan is their third stringer. Who, if you're asking him, I think you're their fourth string, Jose. I'm not sure. I haven't looked it up. I haven't gone that far in the depth chart, but you might be fourth.
This is an easy Zach Wilson week one starter. I don't care if they go 0-16. You keep him in there every week.
Really? I disagree, because this is sort of the situation that I'm talking about, because I do agree it's different than the Jaguars with Trevor Lawrence. It feels like the Jaguars are positioning themselves and they're building all things up at the same time. And the coach is new, the quarterback's new, the running back is new, they have a lot of pieces that are changing. And I know that the Jets, they have a new coach, and your old 49ers defensive coordinator, which I'm sure you're not happy to see leave. But the Jets just, maybe it's just the incompetence of their, the legacy of their incompetence, but it feels like Zach Wilson, I don't think that he has the pieces around him to make him successful. Tevin Coleman is their is their starting running back. Corey Davis, Jamison Crowder are their starting wide receivers. I mean, it just, I guess their defense is okay, kind of. I mean, CJ Mosley's kind of the only one that really stands out. Quinnen Williams is.
The Jets were better than the Jaguars last season, right?
By one game, yes.
I mean,
but it felt like the Jaguars were trying to be bad. I think after that opening week against the Colts where they won that, I think that they realized they're like, oh crap, we got to not be good anymore. And it feels like the Jaguars did a better, they started from lower, but they are ending up higher. And the Jets, I'm just afraid that Zach Wilson is going to be like a David Carr situation where he just gets brutalized to the point where he has talent, I think. I mean, he was a one-year wonder for all intents and purposes. And I think if he just gets beaten to death in his rookie year, he might just fall apart. I don't know. I think that you should at least, number one, you have to have a better backup. We talk about Gardner Minshew. The Jets should be clamoring. You have to have a guy that this rookie, if you're gonna start him week one, you need to have somebody there, like a Ryan Fitzpatrick or an Alex Smith or whoever's available, just to have him there and say, hey kid, it's gonna suck. Here's what you have to look forward to, and at least give him some pointers. I mean, Zach Wilson's going to turn to James Morgan or Mike White and say, hey, man, what should I do? And they're going to go, the hell do we know? I don't know.
Sounds like a guy from like a Western movie or something.
So I think that if anything, maybe you just suck it up and say, you know what? We're going to be the Jets one more year and we're going to get this kid some help. Maybe we'll get a running back or a wide receiver or a tight end.
You draft Michael Carter in the third round, I believe. He's a decent running back from North Carolina. I just... I know we're trying to move quickly through it. I'll just say this. You draft him number 2 overall. First of all, Lord Voldemort is not there anymore. Adam Gase is out of the building. So all the talent sucking and is gone. Yeah. We've seen multiple players, Ryan Tannehill, Kenyon Drake, Robbie Anderson, leave Voldemort's gaze and find a way to have success in other places. I think you're going to see the Jets have new life in their offense. I'm not saying they're going to be good, but if you're literally saying, my team is not good enough to have my number two pick play for them, don't draft a quarterback number 2 overall.
Yeah, I mean, I guess just, and the last thing I'll say is just by the mere fact that they don't have anyone to turn to, I guess Zach Wilson has to be kind of your default week 1 starter. So
hopefully he's tough enough to deal with being trash. Almost every quarterback comes in and their team is trash year 1. It's very, very rare that you come in and you're like, oh yeah, we're a 10-win team my rookie year. It doesn't happen very often.
Yeah, we'll see. I mean, I just hope he doesn't get murdered out there. Number 3, your 49ers drafted Trey Lance, number 3 overall. Now this is interesting, especially from you, from the fan side and from the objective analyst side.
I think
when should Trey Lance be starting?
So I think based on what we saw from Jimmy Garoppolo in 2019 when they went to the Super Bowl, he was hurt. He only played 6 games last year. I think Jimmy Garoppolo, assuming he plays well in the preseason, which so far he's been outplayed, but assuming he plays well in the preseason, I think Jimmy Garoppolo probably gets the default start for the year with a very short leash. I mean, this is a team that could potentially have Super Bowl aspirations depending on how optimistic they are. So I would start Jimmy G, but like right on deck, ready to go is Trey Lance the minute that it's not working out.
Yeah, I think this is pretty easy actually, because I mean Jimmy Garoppolo, one of the reasons that they drafted Trey Lance is because he can't stay healthy. He just can't. When he's on the field, he's good, but he's just not on the field. So I think it's an easy transition for Kyle Shanahan. You just say, Jimmy G's our starter. Let him get out there, get some reps, and then, 3-4 weeks in, something's going to happen, and all of a sudden you don't have a choice. You have to put the kid in. So Jimmy can't be mad about it. The fans aren't going to be mad about it, and it's just going to be what it is. And then you have Jimmy Garoppolo as your backup, presumably, and he's a great backup. He can come in and give you a few good games, and then probably get hurt again.
And honestly, if he has a good, let's see, even like he goes through 2020 and has a great or 2021 and has a great season, you just trade him, right? Like you just maybe get a 2nd round pick well, God, who knows? Maybe you get a first round, but get a second round or a third round pick for a guy that you were going to get nothing for anyway when he walked. So I think it's an easy, like you said, easy decision.
Next up, Justin Fields, drafted by the Chicago Bears. They do have, just to remind you that at the moment, they do have Andy Dalton and Nick Foles on that quarterbacking squad.
This is probably the most difficult one so far. I think I would probably lean towards Andy Dalton starting the year, mostly because they play the Rams in week 1. So you could let Andy Dalton be like the sacrificial.
Yeah, lunch for Aaron Donald.
Yeah. Like you could give Andy Dalton 5 weeks. He won't be good. Trust me. And then it'll be like, oh yeah, Justin Fields, just get in there. I mean, I'd say 4 or 5 games, let Andy Dalton do what he can, and then you bring Justin Fields in.
Yeah, I agree. I think Andy Dalton should be your first year starter. And the thing is, one of the things you hear from rookies a lot is just that the speed of the game takes, there's a steep learning curve because, the fastest guys in college and the strongest guys in college are now all of the people that are around you. It's not just 1 or 2 guys. It's everyone is the best of the best. And so that learning curve to catch up with the speed of the game is something that I think is better suited for some people kind of watching first and then jumping in rather than just being thrown into the fire. And Justin Fields, I feel like he's going to be very good. I mean, I know the Bears are kind of snake bitten at that position, but it seems like if he's able to kind of come along at his own pace and not be rushed into anything, I think he could really work out. So yeah, I agree. I think Andy Dalton is just good enough to kind of, maybe they go 2-2 in those first 4 games, and then you kind of just say, all right, if it's, because the Bears have a good defense, and they have a smart coach, they have a decent offense. They just need a better quarterback, and I think Fields might be it, just not week 1. Mac Jones. Next up for the Patriots. Patriots also have Cam Newton, and it's an open competition right now. So if and when should Mac Jones be starting?
This is more about my opinion about the Patriots not being very good this year. I would just throw Mac Jones in there. I saw enough from Cam Newton last year to tell me that he wasn't a good quarterback. I know he said he wasn't fully healthy and all that stuff. And I'm like, well, why should we believe that you're going to be fully healthy now after another year of wear and tear? So, throw Mac Jones in there right away.
I don't think that they're going to do that. I think Cam's going to be the week 1 starter, but I think right. Mac Jones, just watching some preseason of him, he is the prototypical, not that he's Tom Brady, but he's Tom Brady in the sense that he stands in the pocket and he makes accurate throws from what I've seen so far. He's not terribly elusive. He's not going to, you're not going to confuse him with Lamar Jackson. But I think that he's sort of that, that old school stand in the pocket, just make a right decision kind of player. And while I think Cam is going to get the start, I think if he has another one of his, 3 interception games, it's going to be a real quick hook. And the Patriots aren't going to look back once they put Mac Jones in.
Agree with everything you said.
Then that's the first round. Round 2, Kyle Trask with the Buccaneers. I think we know that Kyle Trask is going to be sitting for at least a year, probably 2, behind Tom Brady. So that's kind of easy. The other one that was interesting, I forgot because he was in the 3rd round. I only went through the first 2 rounds. But Kellen Mond for the Vikings. That's actually interesting because he seems like he's a bit of a sleeper. And to be honest, Kirk Cousins, he had a good year last year, but he's still Kirk Cousins.
Yeah, people constantly disrespect Kirk Cousins. His numbers are always good year after year.
Good, not great.
Yeah, but is Kellen Mond basically so good. His biggest flaw is that he's not a top 6 quarterback. Or a top 8 quarterback. Like Kirk Cousins is a serviceable quarterback in the NFL, which is more that can be said than for a lot of quarterbacks. I think Kellen Mond will probably be an interesting option next season, depending. I don't know what Kirk Cousins' contract situation is, if he can be cut after the end of this year with low dead cap dead cap money. That would be the one thing but I don't see any way he starts this year, other than injury.
I agree. I think Kirk Cousins was good enough last year where you can't justifiably take him out for a guy like Kellen Mond. I mean, you could, if for somehow Kellen Mond becomes like a Patrick Mahomes, I could see an Alex Smith like situation with Kirk Cousins, because it's very similar. I think Alex Smith and Kirk Cousins are pretty parallel.
They're perfect comps. Yes.
Yeah. So if you get a feeling that Kellen Mond might be that level, then that's a different story. But we don't see Patrick Mahomes very often, so I don't think that's even going to be an issue. So yeah, and then two more that they're not rookies, but it's the same question nonetheless. Jordan Love, Green Bay Packers.
Yeah, he will. He might start next year, maybe.
Okay,
we'll see.
I agree. Finally, New Orleans Saints, Taysom Hill, Jameis Winston. Who's starting? Who's not?
Gosh, I thought they had a pretty ugly debut too. I think Jameis Winston, honestly, just because of the ceiling play. Obviously Taysom Hill gives them a better floor, but I don't think the Saints at this point, with the money they've invested in Alvin Kamara and Michael Thomas and various players on that team, are concerned about a high floor. They want the high ceiling, so they're going to go with Jameis Winston.
Yeah, I think Jameis Winston makes more sense because of this simple fact. If Jameis Winston is the quarterback and then Taysom Hill comes in, you don't know if it's going to be a run or a pass or an option where the quarterback runs to catch a pass. Mm-hmm. If Taysom Hill is the quarterback, the starter, and then they bring in Jameis Winston, you know that they're going to just be throwing the ball. So you automatically know it's a pass. So from a strategic standpoint, Taysom Hill being that wild card player that he is more suited to kind of being a wild card, where you bring him in kind of periodically to use him in different ways because his skill set is so diverse. Whereas Jameis is a quarterback, and that's it. And he learned under Drew Brees, and hopefully he'll cut down that, from that 30 interception year that his last year in the Bucs kind of produced. But yeah, I think Jameis should be the starter, and Taysom should be sort of the intermittent kind of change-up guy. And I think that makes the most sense.
Completely agree.
Yeah. So we're going to move on. Speaking of, we touched on Zach Wilson a little bit. We're going to run through very quickly the AFC East, kind of, we're going to do our breakdowns here. And AFC East, pretty straightforward, I think. We're going to take a break after that and kind of come back and do the NFC East, which is a little more difficult, little worse division, probably the worst division in football, debatably.
Wait, which one is the worst division in football? The NFC East? Interesting.
I think
okay.
Possibly. Right. Maybe the NFC North. I don't know. There's tough. Well, that's just the Lions, but we'll talk about that.
Interesting.
AFC East. I think this is pretty easy to begin with. I think we both have the Bills on top. That's not really a stretch. It's pretty easy.
Nothing to overthink. 13 wins last year, 1 game away from the Super Bowl. Josh Allen's top 5. Stephon Diggs top 5. Defense is good enough. Weak division in my opinion too. So yeah, there's nothing. None of the teams have really closed the gap on them. The only thing I would say about the Bills is that I think it's safe to say they have aspirations beyond just winning the NFC or the AFC East.
Yes.
And I don't know that I don't think that they've really closed the gap between themselves and the Chiefs. And I'm not 100% sure if I had to put money on it, that I would pick them to get to the AFC Championship game.
Yeah, it's tough to say. Anything can happen. I think that the running game for the Bills was very suspect last year. Devin Singletary, not great. They have Zach Moss and Matt Breida now, which arguably is better. They did sign Emmanuel Sanders, who I think is a good complementary piece to Stephon Diggs and Cole Beasley. I think he fits in nicely there as sort of a, he'll get you a catch when you need a catch, and that's what he's good for. And he's a smart veteran at this point. So I think he's looking to win. He wants to win. And so that's pretty easy, I think. So now, but it gets interesting after that. So let me ask you, who's the second team, number 2 in the AFC East for you going into?
So I went back and forth a little bit. I picked the New England Patriots.
Oh wow, okay, so did I.
Yeah. Well, early in this offseason, I was kind of on the Dolphins being the number 2 team. I'm not really. I'm sorry.
I agree. Yes.
Yeah, I'm not sure. But normally all my decisions I try to make all my decisions based on objectivity, and this is just a feeling. I'm looking at the Patriots. This is a team that won 7 games with quite possibly the worst quarterback play in the entire league last year, plus 3 defensive starters opting out because of COVID. Stephon Gilmore, former Defensive Player of the Year, best defensive player on their team, played only 11 games last season. They're in the middle of maybe the most difficult quarterback transition ever, going from Tom Brady to trash. The fact that they managed to win 7 games, including wins against the Ravens, Chargers, and Cardinals last year, it just gives me thought that, this was a team that was kind of holding the fort a little bit last season, and perhaps with a few better bounces here and there, maybe some improved quarterback play, although that is questionable, they could win 8 to 9 games, or maybe even 10. And I'm just a little cold on the Dolphins. I'll let you go talk about the Patriots a little bit before I move into the Dolphins.
Yeah, I had this exact same thought process. It seemed like the Dolphins should be number 2, but the 2 things that sprung to mind when I really put pen to paper was, number 1, Bill Belichick is Bill Belichick. Yep. And Brian Flores is a disciple of Bill Belichick, and it's the master generally doesn't teach. He teaches the student everything he knows, but he doesn't teach him everything the master knows. So it's like there's still that kind of aura of dominance from the Belichick, because it's like, hey man, I made you, so even it's just hard to shake. But then the other thing is, number 1, I think you're right in terms of all the defensive starters that are now back. The Patriots they made a lot of moves this offseason. Lawrence Guy back. They got Dante Hightower back. Kyle Van Noy's back from the Dolphins this season. Stephon Gilmore, Devin McCourty. Matthew Judon, I forgot, is signed by the Patriots. He came over from the Ravens. He is an excellent linebacker. And then the other, on the offensive side of the ball, the Patriots have some skilled pieces. They signed Nelson Aguilar. They signed Kendrick Bourne from your 49ers. They signed Hunter Henry, who got hurt and probably will keep getting hurt. But Jonnu Smith, he got hurt briefly, but if they can have that 2 tight end set, circa, Gronk and Aaron Hernandez, they might be able to do something. And I do think that once Mac Jones gets comfortable, he's going to be able to use those pieces effectively. And even Damian Harris, I don't know if you watched him at all, but Damian Harris is basically number 1 on our depth chart at running back, and he looks like a different guy than he did last year. He is somehow bigger and looks faster, and just and James, don't forget about James White. James White is a little dump off guy, for a guy like Mac Jones, who is presumably going to kind of try to be that Tom Brady role. James White, how many safety blankets is James White provided for Tom Brady over the years? And I think he could do the same thing. So it just feels like, the Patriots are gearing up. I don't think that they're going to make a huge playoff run, but I do think that they're going to at least compete with the Bills for that division title again.
Yeah, everything you said it's just spot on. I think both of our feelings are just about more of a vote of confidence in Bill Belichick, and kind of looking beyond just the record last year. Mm-hmm. And when I was looking at the Dolphins last season, and they win 10 games last year, 10-6, good record, and they surprised some people. When you look at Tua Tagovailoa, there's 9 games, 11 touchdowns, 5 interceptions, average only 181 passing yards per game. I realized they were 6-3 in those games, and I don't want to fall in love with, oh well, he won the game, so he's a winner. Like, no, they won the game in spite of him playing basically like a mediocre to below average quarterback. And then what did they do to help him this year? They added Will Fuller, who's still suspended for week 1 and is already battling injuries in camp. Yep. They drafted Jalen Waddle, who's also recovering from an injury this year, from last year. They didn't upgrade their running game much outside of a second-round offensive line investment, and they brought in Malcolm Brown, yep, who was a perennial backup. There's really nothing on offense for me to get excited about. They do have a decent defense, Xavier Howard, Jason McCourty, Byron Jones, but I'm just not confident that this team is going to continue in the direction that we saw them going in. And so basically kind of a gut feeling, I've moved them to 3rd.
Yeah, I mean, I think I agree, and a big part of that is at the quarterback position because last year we saw kind of the flip flopping of Brian Flores with Tua and Ryan Fitzpatrick, and now that's not really an option. I mean, their backup quarterback for Tua is Jacoby Brissett, who is okay. I mean, he didn't do much as a starter when he was on the Colts for a little while, so it's kind of do or die at time for Tua. And yeah, he does have his old buddy Jalen Waddle there, but we haven't seen him play basically all year. I think he caught 2 passes in the college championship game. Will Fuller when he's playing is great. The problem is he's either hurt or he's using PEDs and getting caught and not playing. So the thing with Tua, I don't know how to verbalize it because I just was not impressed by him on or off the field last year. And when he was on the field, he looked kind of overwhelmed. And then off the field, here's my problem with Tua. Tua kind of looks a little and sounds a little like Russell Wilson. But when he talked, if you listened to not just how he talked like Russell Wilson, but the words he used were not as insightful and not as I don't want to say football IQ. In terms of football IQ, they were not as high as you would hear from Russell Wilson. Now, granted, Russell Wilson's been in the league 10 years, but even early on, I mean, Russell Wilson just felt more poised and just smarter from a football perspective. Tua, he doesn't always. He talks like he knows what he's saying, but a lot of times, if you listen to what he's saying, it just doesn't sound right. And I know that's not a great way to explain it, and especially kind of ironic that I'm talking about someone who doesn't know how to talk, and I'm having trouble talking about it. sort of funny, but I don't think that he is who the Dolphins hoped he was going to be. I'll put it that way. And I think that's going to come to fruition this season, and it's going to hurt them. And luckily for them, the Jets are in a division, so they probably won't be in last place.
I will say that I'm not willing to just give up on Tua. I just don't think that he's this. I don't think this year is the year. He may end up becoming a good quarterback, but I don't think it's this season. And I haven't seen enough in 1 year to determine whether he's a good quarterback or not.
Yeah, I mean, from the trajectory that it looks like from what I saw is that he's sort of on that Mitch Trubisky route where it's, he's going to be okay, but from where he was drafted, he's not going to live up to expectations.
Fair enough.
Which leads us to the lowly New York Jets once again. And I mean, we kind of touched on them earlier when we talked about Zach Wilson. The Jets they're the Jets. And honestly, at this point, until the Jets prove that they can kind of break through this mire of incompetence, and I know they took a big step towards that by getting rid of Adam Gase, but I'll believe it when I see it. I'll put it that way.
Yeah, they're in last place. They're going to be probably one of the worst teams in the NFL. And quite honestly, I mean, we see their win-loss. The win total. Vegas Insider has their over/under win total at 6, and I'm inclined to take the under until I start seeing some positive, some growth, something to get excited about. And I mean, listen, this is the year to do it. Just win 7 games, go 7-10, and give your fan base something to feel good about. But yeah, I'd be surprised if they get close to that 6 games. I think 4 or 5 is probably more likely.
Yeah, and their points allowed were, I mean, they're
just bad everywhere.
Grotesque. Yeah, I mean, that's the thing is that their defense wasn't even that affected last year, and they gave up 457 points, which is real bad. So I'll believe it when I see it.
Yep.
All right, let's take a break. We're going to come back, and we're going to touch on the NFC East or NFC East and see exactly who we think is going to be in place and who's going to be in last place. And our results might surprise you, or maybe not, depending on how much you're paying attention. So stick around. We're going to come right back with that on the Benchwarmerz podcast.
Thanks for listening to the Benchwarmers Podcast. Follow along with us on the Benchwarmers Podcast on Facebook and Instagram. And don't forget to review us on iTunes, Google Play, or wherever you get your podcasts.
If you're sick with COVID-19 or think you might have it, take steps to help protect other people from getting sick. Stay home except to get medical care. Call the doctor before visiting. Separate yourself from others who live with you. Wear a cloth face covering to protect others. Cover your coughs and sneezes with a tissue and clean your hands right away. Avoid sharing items with other people in your home. This includes things like towels and bedding. Be sure dishes are washed in hot water or the dishwasher before anyone else uses them. Stay aware of how you feel. If you start to have difficulty breathing or if you're worried about your health, call your doctor. For more tips, visit cdc.gov.
And now back to the Benchwarmers podcast with Lou and Jose.
Welcome back to the program, everyone. I am still Lou Ruggieri. That's still Jose Ortiz. And this is still the Benchwarmers podcast. Season 2, episode 16, almost in the books. Go back and listen to the beginning of this show and all of our other shows, iHeartRadio, Amazon Podcast, iTunes, wherever you get your podcast, Spotify. We're on YouTube, Instagram, and Facebook at the Benchwarmers Podcast, at the BW Pod on Twitter, or go to thebenchwarmers.com for all things we just mentioned and more. A lot. We went through a lot on the show already. I can't believe this is almost the last segment here. Clippers re-signing Kawhi Leonard, Marcus Smart re-signing with the Celtics. I talked about how awful Hard Knocks was. We kind of went through the rookie QBs of the 2021 draft and who should start, who will start, and just touched on our rankings for the AFC East, which leads us to our final segment of the show, the NFC East. And I would say the best for last, but it's the worst for last. The NFC East is so bad. I don't know. This was deceptively difficult to rank and rate, Jose, and I'm not sure. I can tell you off the bat, the Washington football team is my number one team in the NFC East, and I mean that's not a huge stretch considering I'll use the term won the division. They didn't lose the division last season with a 7-9 record. I do think that they're going to be the best team in this division. I think that Ryan Fitzpatrick is going to be amazing in September, and then that's it. And I do think Taylor Heineke. What I saw last season, I mean, he wasn't great, but it just when he was playing, it felt like the team had a different energy to it. And I don't know how to say it any better than that. It just felt like he was in control of the offense, and I think that by the season's end, I think that he's going to be the starter, and I think they're going to do well. They have a good team: Antonio Gibson, Terry McLaurin, Curtis Samuel, Adam Humphries is there. They just, and their defense is scary. I mean, Chase Young is a bona fide superstar, and he is a monster. Montez Sweat is another one. I think he's a little underrated on that team, and Ron Rivera is a good coach. He does things the right way. He's smart, he's calculated, and he takes calculated risks that I think his teams appreciate, and they like that he puts his faith in them. And I think it's going to shine through. It hurts me to say it, but the Washington football team, I think, is going to be the best team in the NFC East next season.
Yeah, this was a very difficult division, just because I think of all the divisions that we've gone through so far, and perhaps all the divisions in the NFL, there's such a wide range of outcomes.
Yeah.
If I told you that the Cowboys won 12 games in 2021 or this coming season, I don't think anyone would be like, "Oh my God, it's just impossible." Like that's certainly in the realm of possibilities. Sure. If I told you the Cowboys won 6 games this coming season, that's also in the realm of possibilities. I think you could make an argument for the Washington football team winning division. You can make an argument for the Cowboys. You could probably make an argument for the Giants even to win the division. I picked the Cowboys because I think when everyone's healthy, they're just the best team. On offense, Dak Prescott, I know you don't like him, but he's been a very good quarterback in the regular season, which is what we're talking about. So he's been a very good quarterback throughout his career. Last year, he got hurt in 5 games. The Cowboys were averaging over 30 points a game when he was there, and then they fell apart when Andy Dalton came in and the entire offense struggled. And we saw that not only in the stats, we saw it on the field where they just couldn't move the ball consistently because Andy Dalton is trash. And I'm looking at a Cowboys team that upgraded their defense with Micah Parsons, has among the best wide receiving trio in the NFL with Amari Cooper, CeeDee Lamb, and Michael Gallup. Ezekiel Elliott, it's fair. He wasn't very good last year, but no one on the Cowboys offense was good last year. The year before that, I think he had 1,300 yards rushing. So they have a very capable offense, and I forgot about their Hall of Fame bound offensive line in Tyron Smith and Zach Martin. So on offense, I just don't like if everyone plays the way if everyone's healthy and just doesn't even exceed expectations, just have a regular season. I don't see any way the Cowboys won't have a top 5 offense. And so that's the reason why I just have them. I just think they're just head and shoulders better than everyone else on offense.
I think that they should be. And I don't think that this team they're missing something. And I don't know what it is, because on paper, you're right. They have maybe the best receiving core from top to bottom in the league, or at least they're in the conversation. Mm-hmm. Zeke, we've seen Zeke be amazing, not recently, but and Dak should be good if he plays, but I don't see it. I think the Giants are going to be the second best team in this league, because it's sort of the same argument where it's if everybody's healthy on the Giants and we finally get to see Daniel Jones with Saquon Barkley and Evan Ingram, and now they signed Kenny Golladay in the offseason to go along with Sterling Shepard, Darius Slayton. I think that offense could be dangerous. And the breaking point between these two was, number one, the Cowboys, while Micah Parsons does look promising, linebacking was not a problem really for the Cowboys. It was their secondary that was the problem. Leighton Vander Esch got hurt, and that did hurt a little bit.
And Sean Lee.
Well, Sean Lee, we knew, you pencil him in for 4 games a year. That's it. But, Vander Esch was very good until he got hurt. And while Micah Parsons, unless he becomes, the next Ray Lewis, I don't know that that's going to be the defining factor that changes the tide and turns the tide for that defensive side of the ball. Maybe. I mean, I hope for their sake, because they should be good. But I think that Joe Judge for the Cowboys, or for the Giants, excuse me, versus Mike McCarthy for the Cowboys, I think it's no contest. Joe Judge is a professional coach. He comes from a New England Patriots line of coaching, and he's a no-nonsense, straight shooting kind of tough guy, old school coach model. And Mike McCarthy is showing Austin Powers clips to his players to get them motivated. It feels, last season, it's not just that. Last season, remember, he was smashing watermelons like Gallagher to get his team motivated last season. I mean, it's just no, I'm not buying into it. I don't think that McCarthy has the ability to kind of rein in all of that talent and channel it appropriately. I think Joe Judge will get more from less from the Giants than Mike McCarthy will from the Cowboys.
So I want to turn this into a referendum on the Cowboys here, because you're comparing Joe Judge to Mike McCarthy. Joe Judge's lone season in the NFL was last year, and he was 6-10. Mike McCarthy, 131 wins as an NFL coach, same record as the Giants had last year, by the way, with a worse roster than the Giants had last season. And maybe not worse roster. I guess it's probably comparable. But either way, the fact they're just anointing Joe Judge as a far better coach than Mike McCarthy, I'm not even sure what that's based on, other than you not liking his tactics that you've seen on Hard Knocks or on TV. But other than, Mike McCarthy has had success in the NFL. And he had
Mike McCarthy. Just to stop you for a second. Mike McCarthy had Aaron Rodgers. Okay, so let's
Bill Belichick had Tom Brady. every
but
great.
Bill
You show
Belichick
me
was
a great coach that
successful
didn't have
before-
a good. No, he wasn't.
before-
He wasn't successful before Tom Brady. He was a losing coach before Tom Brady.
On the Browns, he was a losing coach. He's
Okay.
Drew Bledsoe. I mean, he was not. He had winning seasons with Drew Bledsoe before Tom Brady came onto the scene. Yes, Tom Brady elevated him, and you can make a case. But I mean, Bill Belichick is, I think, second in all-time wins as a coach. He's a 3-time Coach of the Year. The only person that's better than him is Don Shula.
How many coaches of the year did he win without Tom Brady on his team?
0.
How many Super Bowls did he win without Tom Brady?
Okay, but this isn't about Bill Belichick. This is about I'm talking about Mike McCarthy. Mike McCarthy, even with Aaron Rodgers, was only able to win 1 Super Bowl.
Okay.
And it's all of those seasons. And we saw Aaron Rodgers. The reason Mike McCarthy was one of the big reasons that he was let go was because Aaron Rodgers was vocally, outwardly complaining about Mike McCarthy's lack of ingenuity and lack of creativity, and just he was being mired into this rut. And from what we've seen since Matt LaFleur's gotten there, apparently he was right. So now with a guy who's not as talented, I don't think there's anybody really as talented, maybe Patrick Mahomes, but there's nobody that's as talented as Aaron Rodgers is. And it's not meant as a diss towards Dak Prescott, but Dak Prescott isn't anything like Aaron Rodgers was in 2010. So I just don't see it. I just don't believe it.
Just last thing here, because people do this all the time. There is no great coach that is a great coach without great players. Bill Belichick, 1 winning season without Tom Brady as his quarterback. Oh no, 2. I'm sorry, 2 winning seasons in 26 years without Tom Brady as his quarterback. Like you can't sit here and say, oh well, he had Brett Favre, he had Aaron Rodgers. Like, of course, Phil Jackson had Kobe Bryant and Shaq and Michael Jordan. Like, you're a great coach is because you have great players. And I take issue with you saying that Joe Judge is a far better coach than Mike McCarthy, because I don't know what it's based on. It's certainly not based on any results. It's not based on any success that Joe Judge has had.
No, it's based on just the limited amount of time I've seen them with their respective teams. They both win with their team for the same amount of time. And I think that Mike McCarthy did, like I said, I think he did a lot less with a lot more. And
they had the same amount of wins.
It's the eye test, okay? Well, and we'll see. Maybe listen.
Either way, I don't want to. I have the Giants as my second team, so it's not like I'm off of the Giants. I think they're a good team. It's more about my lack of confidence in the rest of the division. Daniel Jones is such a weird quarterback to me.
Yes.
I don't know. I just don't know who he is. In year 1, he had 26 touchdowns, 12 interceptions, 24 touchdowns, 12 interceptions, looked really promising, and then really took a huge step back last season. Now, he did lose Saquon Barkley for most of the year. I'm not really sure what to expect from them coming in, but I think at their best, their offense is going to be better. Like, I think that people are acting like Ryan Fitzpatrick is this do people forget that he has 2 winning seasons in his entire career? Like, he's not a good quarterback. Ryan Fitzpatrick is a bad quarterback. If Ryan Fitzpatrick is starting over you, it's because you are a bad quarterback. It's not because Ryan Fitzpatrick is a good quarterback. And so I'm looking at Daniel Jones and I think, well, if he plays well, he's probably at least as good as Ryan Fitzpatrick, if not better. And I like the Giants' offensive weapons outside of Terry McLaurin. I like the Giants' weapons better on offense than I like
Washington.
Washington
football team.
I'm sorry, Washington. I said the Oklahoma Redskins. Sorry about that. Yeah, I like the Giants' weapons better than the Washington football team's weapons. Antonio Gibson's nice. Terry McLaurin's nice on the Washington football team, who I have as my third team. And yes, they have an elite defense, but defenses rarely maintain their level from year to year. It's the offenses, because of quarterback play, that have a better chance of maintaining their play from year to year. I have more faith in the Giants being able to be a team that kind of hovers around 500. I think what we saw from Washington last year was a result of the Eagles being trashed, the Cowboys being decimated by injuries, and the Giants being decimated by injuries. The Washington football team just happened to be the last team standing.
Yeah, I mean, we'll see. I again, I think you prefaced this entire segment by saying there's so many potential outcomes, and it's just I'm just playing the odds. I think that Washington's going to be first. I think Giants are going to be second, which Dallas I have as third, just because I think again from a talent standpoint, I think the Cowboys are the best team on paper, but we've seen plenty of good teams on paper not win their respective championships, but that does leave the Philadelphia Eagles at the bottom of the NFC East, and I'm not sure why, because even on paper they're not bad. Do you know? So Jalen Hurts, I've been a long-standing fan of Jalen Hurts, and I do want him to see him do well. There's been rumors that the Eagles are making a push for Deshaun Watson, and what's going to happen to Jalen Hurts and blah blah blah. But do you know who Jalen Hurts' backup is? His backup quarterback?
Oh my gosh, is it Colt McCoy? No, that's the Cardinals. I have no idea.
He is a former Super Bowl MVP.
Former Super Bowl MVP?
Yeah. He has a ring.
Oh, goodness.
He had one of the great postseason runs in history.
Joe Flacco.
Yes.
That's all you had to say.
Yep. Joe Flacco is the backup quarterback. And again, as I mentioned earlier with, I think I forget who we were talking about, but Joe Flacco as a backup quarterback, not a bad backup. And he could probably, despite it's one of those do what I say, not what I do kind of things. But as a teacher, he could maybe instill some intelligence and some football knowledge and some experience onto Jalen Hurts that he could then translate to success on the field. Miles Sanders, if he's healthy, is a good running back. They did draft Devontae Smith, who has ties to Jalen Hurts from Alabama, and if Devontae Smith can be anything like what he was in college, all of a sudden this offense gets a lot more prolific than it was. Dallas Goedert comes back and is still good. Jalen Reagor maybe is okay as kind of their number 2 now. And then on the defensive side of the ball, I mean, Brandon Graham, Fletcher Cox are monsters. I mean, they're still great players. So it is interesting to see, because they shouldn't be the worst team in this division, but it looks like they're heading that direction nonetheless.
I'm not sure. I think they definitely should be the worst team in the division. Jalen Hurts was okay last year. He wasn't amazing. He wasn't bad either. He was okay. He was a rookie, and I expect him to get better. But I mean, this, you just start to be like, if you had to pick, I mean, you seem to think that Jalen Hurts is better than Dak Prescott. So, but I think that Jalen Hurts would probably be ranked third, like we were doing consensus. Ranked third in this division at quarterback, with Ryan Fitzpatrick probably in last place. Miles Sanders, I'm not sure I would take him over any of the other running backs on this team. Devonta Smith, he's already dealing with injuries. You and I, were we talking about him being like, is he like 160 pounds?
He's very slight. Yeah, I think he's like 177
He's going to get
pounds.
destroyed. Yeah. He is going to get destroyed in the NFL. This was a team that was really bad last year. And I think it's just a lack of offensive talent. It's all over the football. And perhaps Devonta Smith can help to be a step in the right direction there. But, I mean, even, their offensive line is average. You mentioned, Fletcher Cox, but their defense was pretty average last year too. So I just don't see a lot to get hopeful for if I'm an Eagles fan.
Yeah, I mean, I agree, and that's why I have them last. I mean, they were 4-11 last year, and I mean, I think they'll be slightly better than that. I mean, I think the whole division is going to be better than it was last year, but then again, they might cannibalize each other and just keep everyone around that same, I mean, no one can go 500 at least, so at least we don't have to worry about that anymore. There's no more 8-8 seasons with a 17-game schedule, thankfully. So it's going to be a winning season or a losing season moving forward. So at least there's that to look forward to. But yeah, we'll see. I mean, I think this division is the hardest because there are so many variables and so many things that could in kind of push it one way or the other, and we'll
Absolutely.
see. It's going to be very interesting. So AFC East, I have Bills, Patriots, Dolphins, Jets, and so do you. NFC East, I have Washington Football Team, New York Giants, Dallas Cowboys, Philadelphia Eagles.
I'm going to make sure. I got to write this down.
Yeah.
Because this is so. Most of the time we're pretty close, but this is like way off.
And you had, what was your NFC East order?
I had the Cowboys. I had Cowboys, Giants, Washington, and Eagles.
Oh.
So we were like way off. I can't help but think that your deep love-hate relationship for the Cowboys has influenced your vote.
It's mostly hate. It comes from being disappointed for 25 years. It's like it's not good. It's a lot of hype, and the problem is that the Cowboys get a lot of publicity and a lot of hype, and they don't have a lot to show for it. It's tough to see. And granted, there's been a couple literal miscues in that run where if you go back to the Tony Romo. Against the Seahawks with the ball that slipped out of his hands, and then he tries to run it in, and Babineau for the Seahawks tackles him at like the 2-yard line. That sort of set the tone, and then the Dez Bryant catch, no catch, where that team, they had, they were I think one of the best offenses in that season, and they were facing a Packers team with an Aaron Rodgers with an injured hamstring, and then Dez Bryant makes a catch on a 4th down conversion. And I remember jumping out of my seat and watching that and going, oh my God, he actually caught it. And then all of a sudden it's called back. And then 6 years later, the NFL goes, oh, actually, you know what? That was a catch. Yeah, we messed up. So it just.
Why would you even admit that? Why would you even admit that?
Because I think there was so much backlash because, we went through that whole era of, what is a catch? It started off, with Calvin Johnson. That was the whole Calvin Johnson. That's what he started, was that caught the ball 2 feet in, down, and then he dropped the ball, and they said it wasn't a catch. That insanity. And then it became this entire, these microscopic parsing of what a movement was and what's a football play, and it's just so ridiculous. And so it's been, you have a 13-3 season, and even was it 2007? The Cowboys were in first place, and the Giants bounced them in the first round on the way to their crazy run where they ended Brett Favre's career in Green Bay, and then they beat the undefeated Patriots. So it's just, it's been tough. It's hard not to have that effect because it's you're playing the odds at this point, and the Cowboys are kings of overpromising and underdelivering in the last couple decades. So it's hard not to factor that in.
And I can't argue with you there. That's so true.
All right. So I think next week we'll touch on your division, the NFC West, and an AFC. I'm not sure which AFC. We'll pick it out during this week. But so stick around for that. That'll be fun next week. And we're one more week closer to football season. So thank God for that. So that's going to do it. It's been the Benchwarmerz Podcast, Season 2, Episode 16 in the books. Go back and listen to all of our podcasts wherever you get your podcasts. And we'll have another show for you coming up next week. So for Jose Ortiz, I am Lou Ruggieri, and we'll see you next time. Bye-bye.